I was going to talk about was primarily the work I've got on display, and a bit about my work in practice, which has developed and evolved over many decades now. So, the basic idea for this group of pots is my lifelong view of looking over London and its changing vista over 50 years or more, 60 years perhaps. I was sort of lucky enough, in retrospect, to move to a high-rise before high-rises became an obstacle and an obscene way of living, you know, because this was a open-planned property with fantastic light, and I was only about 3 or 4 when we moved, and it was like living in the sky at the time, because we'd moved from a pretty much slum clearance area with outside loos and dark rooms and gas light. I mean, yes, how old I am. So moving to this new place where I had a 15-foot wall of glass to let the light in. So it was a transformation in my life. I'm never going to forget that way. But anyway, moving on, when I was tall enough, my view of London became looking down rather than looking up, like most people's at that period, looking upwards to the sky, to the roof. But I was looking down at chimney pots, at gable-ended houses, brickwork which was covered in smoke, although the smokeless zone did come in, but it was part and parcel of our everyday life, was walking past all this way of building in those days, which were brick built pretty much. Concrete was coming in, so then that's when you started to get this new geometry. And sorry, I'll pass this book around because it's got the source of inspiration of where I was living at the time. Have a quick look, get an idea. So this hard, crisp energy of the flats which I was living in, I became an inspiration for my work. Even at school, I would look across the way, and there'd be new buildings coming up, and they would be very hard and crisp and precise. Complete contrast to the old style buildings which had been around Victorian and before that. And so I used to make pots they were slab pots at the time rather than the clay fresh on the wheel which they are now. And so from an early start, this has never left me. So that's how this work has evolved. And what I've done over the periods of time working with my work, since I got involved in throwing the pot, I've pared it down over decades again. So basically what you have here is every pot is the same, and it's only the details which make it different. Every piece of work on there is a cylinder to start with, and then the cone is then taken in, and then it's a transforming which is in effect from a distance a two-dimensional view into a three-dimensional object. But then when you do it on the wheel, a triangle becomes a cone. It's not a triangle anymore, it's this three-dimensional object. So giving it a little squeeze and a little cuddle, it will turn itself into similar to this gable end. And then approaching the colour as well is the old iron staining from smoke and coal and just dirt from the city. With the larger pieces, which came much, much later, the view over London, in some respects, got ruined. You know, the tallest building years ago was St Paul's, and I remember that being, we could see it. In fact, I could read Big Ben with some binoculars to get the time, because we didn't have a telephone. Imagine not having a telephone now. We just didn't have it, so we couldn't phone up time. So I would get the binoculars out and just get the right time off Big Ben. which is mad, isn't it, really? But so all that's changed. I'm not sure. I mean, there were some things about in planning that views shouldn't be obstructed. I mean, I think St Paul's is supposed to be able to be viewed never always from the riverside. I think they're not going to obstruct it. But if you go from the north side, it does get ruined. You know, really. So this is not a love project, really. It's just an observation of how things, for me, and the way I see it. So, and what I've do have here is a divide as well, because I've called it looking north, because I live in South London, which may not mean anything to anyone, but South Londoners don't move over the river. I need to get a train or go to an art gallery. But you don't. So I've always been looking up north, and so this has become an obstruction for me to look further north. This modern complex in the middle of the city, you know, around the Barbican and that area. So that's what all this, and it is claustrophobic. It is oppressive, even when you're walking around, because we are minute, you know, compared to some of these buildings. But I just wanted to convey it as an idea on how things have changed. I'm going to go backwards and forwards. It's the way my brain works. So I'm just hopefully it will make sense. But you know, it's just the way I function in the way I'm working. But so what I wanted to do here was contrast the old and the new, but also how with the technique of throwing, how you can make a very simple object like I've got here and transform it just with minor details and small changes to give it a real lift. So I'm going to move this now, so just to get a couple right. So those three pieces are pretty much exactly the same. They're all based on the wonderful chimney pots which all properties have, or did have. But what's the difference there is the detail and the material. This is a porcelain, the other two are stoneware. So this has got a teased and twisted edge, picked out through squeezing just a bit harder, and the other two have been left with generous finishes and generous starts. So just giving those little small changes, I think, give a simple object a way of developing yourself within your work. So understanding the form by simplifying it gives you scope to express and to experiment. If you've got a too complicated form and you start expressing yourself on it, it just becomes a big mess. So by paring it down, it's not restrictive. It's a challenge, and it's something which I feel is really coming together with me now after I've been making pots for 50 years. So it's starting to dawn on me that, you know, I haven't got to do tricks anymore. You know, I don't try and be clever throwing. It's just simple, basic skills, and then just applying some minor changes to give it some change. They're all the same shape again, but by changing the on-surface material, it's given those a slightly more preciousness with a gold inlay. But it's just a simple cylinder again, which is, you know, a basic shape everyone learns to make when you're on the wheel. It's all the fantastic jugs from medieval time were made from this cylindrical shape, and it's a thing I still do as a repetition thing, a bit like doing scales or chords in music, just to keep my skills up, and just to get the idea of just changing the proportions from the width of the bass to the height of it, just twisting it and turning it, a little indentation just to pass it around. No, so the tactile properties are there, inside and out, and the difference of feeling how the mark is made to feeling out what the mark creates on the inside is another aspect of this paring down but keeping it simple. Because we all pick up our pots, we all love our pots, I hope, And we all handle them and love them, and we put some in our mouths. So we have a real intimate association with the pot. So I do hope people, when they take them home after getting them off me, do love them. I don't mean love them, but caress them and hold them and feel them, because that's how I want it to be. Because that's how I make them on the wheel. I try and make a pot with. I engage with the clay. I don't dominate it. I let it have its own voice whenever I can, so that and I don't always these days even centre correctly anymore. So that it will have that bit of natural movement, and then I can get that irregular rim once I get up to the top and finish it. So when you turn it and twist it, it will have an asymmetric feel. It won't be this stark, dominated, hard-looking object at the end of it. Hopefully, it will have a bit of life, bit of energy, bit of vitality. You know, that's what I'm looking for in my work. And I think it's because I've kept it simple and pared it all down, that I can take those risks a little bit. Just try something new each time I'm on the wheel and afterwards. I don't know if that's if anyone throwing it, they probably will experience that side of it, that working with the clay when it's only just it's an inner void with this floppy skin, but it stays up, doesn't it? And it's just fantastic. So I always throw now without a base. I throw them on a bat, which gives me complete liberty to change its shape afterwards. So things like that and that were thrown without a base on, so they're all round to start with, and then I'll put on a false base once I've decided on what the form is. Yeah. So look, most of them, what you see here, have all gone through that process. I think all of them actually. So I can make it square, I can make it oval, I can keep it round if I want. But I've got that. So I don't know what I'm going to do necessarily once I've thrown a piece. It's a bit of a winging it. I don't know if winging it is the right thing. It's spontaneous, it's intuitive. That's better, isn't it, than winging it? It's yeah. But sometimes it is just seeing how it looks. I will just explain the significance of this symbol or placement of detail in that top corner. In the blocks of flats I lived in the very top right-hand corner, which was significant for me, because no one passed our house, because no one could walk past, because we had an open balcony. So that's a sort of always a remembrance of how important living up there, and giving me this reference point for 20 odd years to has the book gone round? Has anyone still got it? Yeah. So those photographs in the middle pages are what I took when I was about 20 or 25 or something like that. So yeah, so that's what that reference point is. And then it's the marks are either the reference point back to the hardness and the crispness of the geometry of the property I lived in, but also when looking up to the centre of London, it's the way the sunlight hits. It hits an angle and then curves round it, so it will highlight things. And we're lucky where I am, because London being on a hill, riverbed. Even my local park, I can see this cluster of properties. So I can just be up there one day and it's like a misty grey, and the next day it's highlighting all the facets. And it's so changeable. It changes over the day, it changes over weeks, it changes over days. It is inspiring, because there's this cluster of trees I look through, and there it is, this mound of geometry going on. So anyway, that's what my interpretation of transforming the landscape, which is my landscape, rather than the beautiful countryside landscape, and how I've responded to it over the years. What I prefer is a textured one, because with a textured clay, you can either leave the texture or make it smooth. If you work with a smooth clay, you can only have a smooth clay. With the textured clay, I buy a very coarse clay and a smooth clay, and then I mix the two together to get different types of qualities. Sometimes I use the texture clay just neat, which is very rough and very organic. But I very rarely use the smooth clay on its own unless I'm making a bit of functional wear, which I do still. So, yeah. But I have no sort of prejudice on the clay. I think they've all got their qualities. The only one I don't use terracotta much because it's so messy. Really, yeah. I've still got stains on my shirts from years ago when I used to use it. So, yeah. And it's all it's all stoneware fired, all 1260-ish, roughly. And the paring back, I used to do very complicated surfaces years ago. In fact, most of my second year at college I spent in the laboratory setup we had, testing glazes to develop a range and get quite complicated and quite involved, which was exciting at the time because I didn't know anything about these things. So over the years, though, I've knocked it back again. I used to use a lot more colour and a lot more shiny surface, but I use that now just for details. And most of what is on these pots is just an oxide wash of various mixes. Some of it is just neat iron or neat rutile or manganese, but the others have got different ratios put together, which will then give you a different quality of grey, quality of black, quality of whatever brown. But then I will refire. I'll get a piece out and I'll have a little look at it, and if it's not quite how I want it to feel, then I will put it back in, which is what I've done with the ones with the bronze gold lines in there. They've been fired several times, and a couple of the others have been fired several times, because once it comes out the kiln, it's not lost. If it's a good form, it's worth pursuing. If the form's a bit dodgy, you know, you're never going to win it back, really. I don't think. You know, you can always see if its form's not right. So if the form's good, then I go with it and try and get it refired till it's in good condition for my purpose. Yeah, but I know when it's really good. I've got a little collection of my own work waiting for my retrospective, which I've saved over the years. Yeah, I'm going way back, like 50 years. Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to get a retrospective, I'm joking, but it's just nice to have them. And when I look at them sometimes, I think, blimey, I could stick that in my show I'm having next week. Because it is so... I'd said once that I was giving a talk, I have given a talk before, I forgot about that, that when I was looking at the work, getting ready for the show, and I was looking for a bit of research, and then I looked at some old photographs, and I said, look, I moved at the speed of a glacier. Because I could still take something from... But for me, there are huge changes, you know, in terms of what I was doing and what I was doing at the time to what I do now. It's much more, I like to think, much more subtle. Someone called me a punk because I was hitting my soft pots with a piece of 4x2. I mean, I've never been punk. It's not what I... But that was the impression that he got from this sort of just a vigorous but controlled moment with the soft clay. Yeah, and now I'm doing the soft clay thing again, so they're really quite floppy and alive now. Yes, of course. Yeah, when teaching, I'd have to, you know, convince people that you've got a centre before you can make any start. Of course, and it's a bit like being a jazz musician. I can pick up a saxophone and play a fantastic riff of nothing, but I can't repeat it. You know, and so, you know, and that's the thing. It's like drawing skills, isn't it? They're really good to keep up and come back to them and readdress them, and then I like to throw, as I say, I do a simple bowl, lots of them, but they're all centred, they're all in control, they all look similar after I've finished. But when I'm trying to do my own work, I don't think, although I've used this, I don't think I've ever made the same pot twice. It may be very similar, but it will not be identical when it comes to the one-off pieces. I just can't feel that it's not for me to do that. So if I think, well, this is getting too similar to something I have made before, I will have to then think, how do I make it different? And I try and do that while throwing somehow. I use lots of tools, lots of ribs and knives and bits of slate, bits of metal for running up and down the side of the pot. It's not just a finger job. The fingers are normally just for the top. Going back long time, I was asked whether I wanted to do painting as a degree, and I decided not to. Well, I didn't want to. I wanted to do ceramics, and we was always encouraged to draw and do a bit of. And I did etching as another subject, so I've always kept that up. And then a few years ago, and I suppose I've always done some sort of drawing on, although quite abstract, on the work with slip and applied bits of clay. It's only very similar to the textured, collage painting. So, and then a couple of years ago, well, quite a bit more than that now, I'd had a load of work come back from a show. I had no space in my workshop really, and I thought, sod this, I don't know if I want to make any more pots. I was just fed up not selling, and then that was all right. And then I found some old bits of wood, the side of a bath actually, because it had the cutouts for the pipe. And I thought, and it's yellow. I thought, I just got some oil and some, what was it? Not grease, like tarmac type stuff. So that started me off, and then I put it on it. So it's a very material-based start, and I just started pushing it back on the bits of wood, and then I threw some sand in it and things like that. So it was more like a bit of a ceramic, really, with all the different materials in it. And then I took it on from there. It had something. It wasn't great, but it had something, and it meant I didn't have to fill my workshop up with pots which ain't going to sell. I could do still something creative and something with a bit more energy if I was doing it on a bit of canvas or a bit of wood or a bit of paper. But so this has come out. These are a bit more deliberate rather than random, and they are based on, I do see that one as looking at London through a rainy window. That's for me how it is. And this one is so archetypal of looking through a little cloudy day from my park, where it's just behind where I live. So they are sort of Londonish based, and they are spray paint, which is representing the graffiti which dominates most Lincoln cities, doesn't it? So, and then that's got some acrylic and some oil stick for drawing. So it's like a big crown. So I can do this, and a lot of the movements. When I had a bad back a few years ago, and I started throwing again, I was very aware of the different movements, and so I was trying to use movements which I do on the wheel. So like the wrist, the elbow, the shoulder, and so I did big arc drawings and then big circular drawings as well. Just because I couldn't throw at the time, so I was just getting back into it. But then I started, using that as my guiding, so they were random, and also the circle a lot, because all my life I've been looking down at this spinning wheel, in my working life anyway. So then I use a lot of circle imagery as well. It's not black clay, is it? Yeah, that's my mix of my texture and that. And this is just got a lot of, well, this one ain't got quite a lot. It's got a wash of oxide, iron and manganese, I think, on this. Yeah, yeah, and I use it sometimes 50-50, sometimes 60-40. So, it varies a little bit. And I throw a bit of cobalt in with a bit of copper sometimes, and you get some different finishes. I put it on bisque. I don't do much at leather hard these days. What I do, I might put the white slip on, so the application of that will be done when it's quite wet and soft, and it just accept the runs. So just after I've distorted it, pushed into it, whatever I've done, then I would apply that to just enhance it a bit. So that's done on the sort of leatherish hard, so it's a bit stiff, so it doesn't collapse it. Yeah, a bit of low temperature white glaze, just because I wanted it really, like I was saying about the sunlight hitting the glass of the buildings, just really reflective. So I wanted then to use that highly gloss white. I don't use it that much, but I've used it a couple of times on this work, so to get a slightly different finish. Thank you.